Hello and welcome back to the shop. So today is Wednesday, our follow-up video, and many of you have noticed I haven't done a follow-up video for about 3 weeks now because I've been out of the shop working on another project, but that's something for another discussion later on around December 1st. So the last 3 videos were all here on the Mori vertical shaper, or slaughter as these are known, but this is called a vertical shaper according to Mori. So many people were like, oh no, that's a slaughter. No, this is a vertical shaper according to them. And here is the data tag, see? 12-inch vertical shaper. So they're known by many things, shaper or slaughter. But, so I use the term universally. So 3 weeks ago, or 3 videos ago, I did them stainless steel hubs, and I was very unhappy with the speed of the cutter, the stroke. And so 2 weeks ago, or 2 videos ago, I changed out my motor pulley, changed that out so it slowed it down, which made a huge difference. And then last video, we cut another one of them hubs that is a repeat job, but they are all different. It's a repeat style of job, but every single part is a little bit different. So a lot of people suggested fixtures. All of them are different. There's about a dozen different ones, and I don't see them enough to make it justify building a fixture. But the slowed down speed made a huge difference just in the way it cut. So we're gonna go back, we're gonna address some of the questions from the stainless hub first. So as with most of my videos, there are a lot of negative, stupid, horrible comments. And right off the bat, just jumping into the stainless job, this guy, yes, cooling is key, but drilling a hole, especially with such a long drill, is always better after first drilling a pilot center hole. Are you a little lazy sometimes? Come on, really? So with them spade drills, you don't need a pilot hole. It does help, but I found it doesn't really make that much difference, especially with the way those spade drills are cut. They've got an amazing point on them, a center, that it's a very easy to start the hole, easy to drill it. They're just ground perfectly for, drilling. They're center drill, it helps a little, but not that much, surprisingly. And then, so here, the next comment here is, in my experience using spade drills, they hate having a pilot hole. Yes, they drill just fine without it. They have no need for it. Starting that drill with a pilot hole, they like to chatter. They like to, fight that hole a little bit. They just don't like it. So they really don't need it. So no, I'm not lazy, and I'm obviously not wrong here. So why haven't there been any follow-up videos? So this is back from, somebody commented this a week ago, and I've been busy. I've been out of the shop doing other stuff, so I just can't get to this stuff, but I will announce the reason for that come early December on the 5-year anniversary of the channel. Here's one. Do you try to keep your stainless swarf separate from the plain steel swarf when you are cleaning it up and putting it in the scrap bins? Sometimes. It's really hard to keep it all separate, and quite honestly, I'm not a scrapper. I am a machinist. I'm making parts. All this stuff to me is garbage. It just goes, it depends on what the material is, but the price difference right now, the cost, steel versus stainless, it's not worth my time to try to completely separate it. And the scrap yards, if they find just one little metal chip in there with the stainless or the aluminum or the bronze, they'll give you crap for it. So honestly, it's not worth it, not worth my time to separate it. I've been burned on that one many, many times. Here's another one. I always found the pilot hole in stainless causes more harm than good. I agree. So overall, just going through here, there's really not a lot of questions other than a lot of comments about how I suggested with stainless, a slower speed, higher feed is key, and a lot of people are stating that's what they found as well. So overall, that was pretty straightforward video. A lot of comments on how they love this machine, how, you know, amazing it is, and I agree. This is one of my favorite machines. So yeah, pretty good video all around. I think I covered all the topics. So let's move on to the video of the upgrade to this machine. So in that video, I changed out the motor pulley to a smaller size, put new belts on it, and that slowed down the stroke speed. There were quite a few comments about, you know, isn't that changeable other ways? It's not. So the stroke, there's a 4-speed gearbox back here, but that only changes the speed of the bull gear. When you adjust the stroke, the longer stroke is going to run faster than a slower or shorter stroke. So yes, you could slow it down, but not when you're getting into long strokes. It still was too fast. That's why I did what I did. Now on the shorter stroke stuff, I can just pick a higher gear. Not a big deal. Very much happy with the outcome of this. Another common comment question is why didn't I use a VFD? A VFD would have worked. And maybe. Now that's some gray area. I've heard a lot of things over the years from people, these older motors, and this is a very old motor. I would be willing to bet this is the original motor from 1940. You saw the data tag earlier, 42. A lot of them old motors do not like variable frequency drives. So going to the motor pulley was, for me, the best option, the smartest option, and quite honestly, the cheapest option. Either way, I would have had to have replaced all 4 belts. So I'm already, you know, that was a total wash there versus a VFD. The other thing is a VFD would have cost me about $300 to $400 for this machine, whereas that pulley and taper lock hub cost me $125. So then I would have had all the work of wiring it in, mounting, you know, a remote speed control, which I would have wanted to do. There's no way I would just go to the VFD and adjust it. I would have put that inside the body, you know, protected, and then put a remote speed control. So overall, this was the cheaper option, the better option. There were a lot of questions and comments of, stupid, again, you're a machine shop. Why didn't you make your own pulley? You need to understand the difference between a business and a hobby. A hobby, you don't have the money or don't want to spend the money, and it's a learned, you're learning a skill by making it yourself. This is a business. I could have spent, you know, a day making that, or I could spend that day doing something else. So the $120, $130 for that whole pulley was well worth the money to me to be able to do something else. So you gotta weigh the cost, the time, all that. And just buying one off the shelf is the way to go for most of the time. If it's readily available, just buy it. It's cheaper. If you're trying to hone your skills, you're a hobbyist, you're trying to learn, go ahead and make one. You'll probably wind up making 2 or 3 of them, so it'll be a great learning experience. You'll probably have 2, 3, 4 days into it. Great learning experience, but as a working shop, I can't justify that. I can't take that time to do that stuff. So just buying it was the smart money. There was also a lot of people who were concerned about, it's a taper lock pulley. You know, that taper lock only goes in about 2/3 of the way of the whole width of that pulley. And they were worried about it cocking. Once you crank those down, tighten that up, they're tight, they're rigid. That overhang, it doesn't matter. It's not hurting anything. Quite honestly, for the 5 horsepower this machine is, 4 belts is overkill. I could put 2 belts on this and be just fine. I could put 1 belt on this and be just fine. So that wasn't an issue. I put 4 on it because that's what it had. So that's how I did it. Another guy commented on matched belts, matched sets. So you can either spend a lot of money on belts and get a matched set, or you can spend a little bit of money and buy, you know, 4 belts that they're close. They're not great, they're close. And like I said, I could have got by with 1 belt, so I threw the 4 on there. They're not a matched set. over time, they'll stretch and they'll all start to match. So I'm not concerned about that. To go to a match set would have been a lot of money. It is doable. So if you're replacing 2 belts, I would definitely do a matched pair. But for this, I wasn't concerned. A few people caught the use of the adjustable wrenches. And somebody commented how, you shouldn't use those. They're just annoying to watch people use those, blah, blah, blah. Many of you that are been with the channel for a while, a long time ago, I used one and somebody had a hissy fit. So I started using them exclusively. That's why. I use these exclusively on camera for that reason, because it does annoy certain people. Off camera, I have box end wrenches on every machine for every bolt, every nut. But on camera, because somebody whined about it, that's what they get. So that's why I do that. So if you don't like it and you commented about that, you're part of the problem. Okay, so here's one that I really wanted to address. Was somebody asked if I could not get or make a bigger top pulley. So there's multiple reasons for that. I'm going to start out with the obvious. The housing, the body of the housing, it's pretty tight in there. Can't get one in there. Can't change out that pulley. The unobvious reason, that is an integral clutch. So the clutch is built into that pulley. So that is where the clutch is, and that's not an option. So we had 2 reasons that couldn't work, and so changing out the motor pulley is definitely the best option in this case, and significantly the cheapest option. Doing a bigger pulley on there, we'd be in the thousands of dollars for a new pulley if it was just a pulley, whereas I was under $200. I was under $300 for this whole repair, including the belt. So I was, the motor pulley is definitely the first one to start with if you're going to do something like this, changing your speeds. That is the smart place to start. So the last thing I want to address, going through the comments here, a lot of people kind of took offense to me with the title of the video, Fixing My Junk, whereas I'm fixing junk. And a lot of people take offense to that. A machine is a consumable. When you're in a business position, a machine is a consumable. I am not a hobbyist. I'm a true machinist, working shop, and this is a consumable to me. Now, when I bought it, it was junk to somebody else. So technically, because I hadn't done any work to it at that point, I hadn't fixed the feed box, I haven't fixed the the stroke speed, it's junk. It's useless junk. I made it work, I made it do a job, but it's still junk. And so by what I've fixed, now I'm making it a useful machine for myself. When the time comes that it is no longer useful to me, it's junk. I can't use it anymore. It needs to go away. So when I sold the little Monarch lathe earlier this year, to me it was useless. It was junk. I couldn't use it anymore. But the next owner has it in their shop and they're using it on a daily basis. So to them it wasn't junk, but to me it was. It was useless. I didn't have a need for it. Same with the second Bridgeport. The second Bridgeport, I had no use for it. It was junk. It was taking up space. It needed to go away. So it went away. The press brake, when I sold that earlier this year, same thing. It needed to go away. It took up space. It was useless junk to me. Just eating up valuable real estate. So to me, it was junk. It's broken. It needs to be fixed or it needs to be dispersed. And that's what it is. So that's why I said fixing my junk. It needs to be fixed, or it was junk to somebody else. And when I got it, as in this case, I hadn't fixed it. So it's junk. It's still junk. It's still got problems in the feed box that need to be addressed. It's still got, there's a bushing that needs to be repaired at some point, and that's going to be happening probably in the next year, along with the feed box. So to me, this machine is still junk, but it's serving a purpose. So I can't, with the feed box the way it is, I can't engage the feed and just let it run and kind of watch the digital readout and finish it out that way and have consistent strokes, feeds during the stroke. So it's junk in that aspect. Yes, it works, I can hand feed it, but it's still not a good functioning machine as it was designed. So it's still junk. So we're gonna be working on fixing some of these things. All right, now on to this last Saturday's video where we had that catastrophic failure of our cutter, where it just busted out on me. And we had a lot of, again, what I consider very stupid and disrespectful questions or comments. Just so many people think that I don't know anything, even though I've been doing this for so many years. It's amazing. I'm just a total moron, swear to God. So let's start in on there were actually some really good questions, but let's start with the comments, the stupid ones, where people were bashing me for not properly clamping this down, that part. It was properly clamped. It was held very well. But when that cutter broke, so the cutter broke and rolled out like this, where is that pushing? What is that going to do? When you crash a mill or you crash in the lathe, something gives. Something had to give here too. So by pushing, when it pushed the part, that's the least rigid of anything on this machine. So no, I did not have it not clamped properly. It was so much force going in there, and thank God that it kicked the part out, because if it hadn't, what would it have done to my tool holder, the machine itself? So I am so thankful that it kicked out. Now I've been doing these parts, these kind of jobs for quite a few years now, and I have never once had that happen where it kicked the part. I've had them break the cutter and then roll the cutter up in and chew up the crap out of my tool holder. I've had them do all kinds of damage to the part. The fact that it rolled that cutter in there, kicked the part out, that created extra clearance, and that could have scrapped. If it hadn't done that, I could have very likely scrapped that part, that $2,000 part. When it comes to me, that's the value of it, is $2,000. And it's not done yet. There's more work that gets done on that part when it goes back to my customer. So the last thing I want to do is screw that up. And no, it was perfect. It was properly held. I weighed all the options. That is the best way I found, and thank God it did what it did. Like I said, I am just so thankful that it kicked that part out and didn't do more damage. So to everybody who thinks I'm an idiot, don't know anything, don't know what I'm doing, there's a reason why I do stuff the way I do it. It's called planning ahead for the worst. Because in my life, I always have to plan for the absolute worst case scenario. I don't expect anything to ever go good, so that way I'm pleasantly surprised if it does. So I plan for the worst, but that was clamped very well. That wasn't moving. I mean, you could beat on that with a 3-pound hammer and it wouldn't move. Maybe a thou. It wouldn't move. But there is so much force in this machine. That's why that moved. So yes, it was clamped properly. If you don't like it, you can clamp yours however you want. But I'm still doing it this way because this is, to me, this is the safest. All right, enough of that rant. Let's move on. There were a lot of comments about the slower speed. A lot of people noticed it from one video to the next, the difference it made, and it made just in the cutting. What I saw personally was a huge difference. The chip was rolling off nicer, still taking 1 to 2 thou of stroke. It was just making a better cut. So, and that wasn't using any brand new tools or freshly ground tools. In fact, this is the cutter I used in that video, and I've done about, well, I did those 4 parts, and I've done, I think, 4 or 5 more before that when I bought this one. So this has done about 8 parts total, and it's still just as good. It hasn't been touched up. So very happy with the way that worked. It just so well. There were a few comments or questions more about lining up the cutter to the hole. You know, there is no tolerance on that part. So it was eyeball it as close as possible, and what I do is it's a 3/4 inch hole with a 7/8 keyway. So I put the 3/4 cutter in there and I line it up best I can. And the customer has been very happy with that. We've had no issues. So it is what it is. A lot of people did comment about how it would probably be better to not have the holes in there. I agree. If it were brought to me without the holes, I would be so much happier, but they're put in there in the machining process beforehand. So unfortunately, that's what I have to work with. And yes, it is hard on the tooling. It does make, I think that may have exaggerated this break or brought it on sooner, but overall, I still get the job done and I get the part back to the customer, and they were very happy that I was able to knock those out as quick as I was. So thankfully the parts came to slow this down and I could get that job done. There was a few people that asked about the offset grind on that one cutter. So that was a used cutter. When I got it, it was given to me by somebody else, and when they broke the corner, they just ground it. And it doesn't seem to make a lot of difference with the rigidity of the setup. You know, it really doesn't seem to make that much difference. But when that finally broke, I do see I had a corner that was already starting to wear pretty badly. So I think there was a little excess force on there, but there was that crack that I showed earlier in the video on Saturday. There was that crack that was already there, and you could see it was polishing. So I don't know if you can see this, but it's polished right here in the corner. That was the original crack. So I don't know how long that had been there, but it is on the side that is ground more than the other. So it's hard telling what actually caused it, but this had been cracked for a while, and then the rest of it finally gave way. So, you know, another one of those, it happened. You know, here's another thing to look at is right on the edge here is the counter bore for the screw hole. So you do have some you know, weak points there, but for the most part, I mean, that shouldn't have failed. It's still pretty sharp, but that corner, yeah, I see it actually. I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but this corner is chipped now. So I don't know when that happened. I noticed a little change a few strokes earlier, but I didn't stop to look. But that is on the side where the original crack was. So that could have exaggerated it as well. So I don't know. Like I said, just glad I had it clamped properly so it kicked the part out and not doing more damage to the rest of the equipment. So I think we covered pretty much all of the questions and comments. Like I said, a lot of dumb ones, a lot of jerk comments, but overall a lot of good questions. So hope I answered everybody's questions. And now I'm gonna kind of fill you in on a bit of what's coming. There's some interesting stuff. So I've got a few videos uploaded, ready to go for you all. Coming up this weekend, we're threading a foot-long threads again, doing that. Making more pin jaws the following week. And then I've got one coming up after that we're using the plate machine again. That copy torch back there, that's such a fun machine. So that'll be a good video coming up. And little update on the sawmill shed. We've had a change of plans. I was gonna order steel. I got my quote and I wasn't happy. So my father-in-law, they had a pole barn go down in a storm a few years ago. So we're gonna go work on taking the steel off of that to put on the shed. I wanted to do the wood shingles, but with the drying season, you know, the time it takes to dry everything and get it up, it's just not going to happen. So the whole lean-to, we want to get the steel on it yet this year if possible. I still got to get that tin off, and we're running out of time. Snow is coming, winter's coming. So I'll try to film, maybe bring the camera with and try to film us taking some of that steel down, maybe getting it up on there. We'll try to do that. We do have Squatch 253's project to work on. We're going to do a mag particle and dye penetrant testing on that shaft to see if there's any problems, and on the flywheel. So got to find out if this thing is even safe to fix. And then if we find any major problems in that shaft, that may become a lawn ornament. So we want to make sure this thing's safe. First off, safe. Secondly, if we have to make a new shaft, is it something that he wants to spend the money on? Because that's a big piece of material. So we got that coming up. We're going to be sawing one more time on the sawmill this year. I've got 15-foot logs from one tree on the deck right now ready to saw up. We got 4 of them, and we left about 30 more feet of the tree back in the woods. That's it would make great paneling, but not good lumber. So, but 60 feet clear to turn into 2x6s to make the rafters next year. They're going to have to get sawed now and sit over winter to dry before we can start working with them. So that's where we ran out of time for the sawmill shed. So I apologize. I was really hoping to get that roof on. It's just not happening. It's too much stuff going on, and along with the big announcement in early December here coming up. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you stick with me. Lots of good content in the old playlists. You know, go back, look at some of the older videos. There's a lot of great stuff there. And till next time, get out in your shop and get it done right the first time.